Can you drink alcohol on the keto diet? The short answer is yes, but being able to enjoy a drink and still achieve your goals goes beyond simply counting the carbs in alcoholic drinks. Let's find out more. Hey Carb Dodgers, my name is Dr. Dan Maggs. Now I struggled with my weight for pretty much the first 30 years of my life until I learned how to do a low carb diet properly. And I lost 30 kilograms or about 66 pounds in just over 6 months, and I've maintained that for over 3 years now. And it changed the way I practice medicine, and I want to share what I've learned with you to help you live a longer, leaner, healthier life. Now I upload new videos every Tuesday, and I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button and then the bell to get notified when a new video goes live. So today I'm going to answer one of the questions that I get asked on a regular basis. Can you drink alcohol on the keto diet? In a nutshell, yes. Many people consume low carb alcohol such as wine or spirits in moderation on a ketogenic diet and are still able to lose weight. Many so-called diets require you to completely abstain from alcohol. And yes, if you're trying to lose weight, then you may wish to keep your alcohol to a minimum in order to maximize your results. But completely abstaining from alcohol isn't often necessary. And I think if we're going to move from diet to lifestyle, then we have to acknowledge the role that alcohol plays in many of our lives and many of our cultures, and look at how we can integrate it into our lives and still achieve our goals in the longer term. And I know all together too well from my day-to-day medical work that alcohol causes a lot of people a lot of devastating consequences in their lives. So I'm not promoting drinking alcohol in this video, but I'd like to think that we can have an adult conversation about it. So we have to acknowledge that drinking is an important part of many cultures. And in fact, when we look at some of the areas of the world where we find people with the longest lifespans, the so-called blue zones, such as Sardinia and Pioppi in Italy, we find that alcohol consumption, in moderation, is an important part of their social lives. But there is a lot more to understanding alcohol and ketosis than just knowing the carb counts of various drinks. So in this video, I'm going to cover how alcohol affects you differently when you're in ketosis. Namely, you get drunk a lot quicker and your hangovers can be a lot worse. And I'll be explaining why this is. Secondly, I'll be looking at why alcohol can actually pause the process of ketosis itself. And then I'll be answering the question that is important for many people. Will alcohol consumption slow down my weight loss while I'm doing the keto diet? And to finish up, I'm going to be taking you through some of the good and some of the not so good choices for alcohol whilst doing keto. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's get going. So ketosis changes the way our bodies respond to alcohol. The first thing you'll probably notice the first time you have a drink after starting keto is that your alcohol tolerance is really low. Now, depending on your perspective, this can be a good thing or it might be a bad thing. It's certainly going to mean you're a cheap date. There are lots of things that affect your alcohol tolerance, things like your genetics, your body weight, your hydration, and how frequently and how heavily you drink on a regular basis. But diet also has an important impact, and keto is a great example of this. So why does this happen? Well, there are a couple of things that are involved. High carb meals, we know, slow down alcohol absorption. And if you've ever drunk on an empty stomach, you'll know that you're going to feel much more intoxicated much more quickly than you would have if you've eaten. And you may have noticed that you need a larger amount of alcohol to reach the same effect after a large carb-based meal. And we know that alcohol absorption is prolonged for around 2 hours after a high carb meal. And whilst I'm not aware of any scientific studies that directly compare the alcohol absorption after a low carb meal versus after a high carb meal, anecdotally it does seem that alcohol is absorbed more quickly after a low carb meal than a high carb one. And the second is low glycogen levels. Glycogen is our short-term stores of easy to access carbohydrates that we find in muscles and in the liver. And it's the liver we're interested in because that's where alcohol is mainly metabolized in your body. If you're on a high carb diet, then your glycogen stores in your liver are usually pretty full. And if you've watched my How Ketones Are Formed in the Body video, which I'll link to in the description below this video, then you'll know that in order to get into ketosis, you must have used up your glycogen stores. And it's these glycogen stores that seem to act like a cushion for absorbing some of the alcohol. But when you're in ketosis, you'll process the alcohol much more rapidly and you'll feel it effects sooner because you don't have that glycogen cushion there anymore. And the second thing that you might notice, and I hope that you don't, is that hangovers can be a lot worse when you're in ketosis. And again, there aren't any definitive studies that I know about that explain exactly why this is, but it likely has to do with dehydration and electrolyte abnormalities, which are creating the perfect recipe for a bad hangover. So now we come to an important question. Will alcohol affect ketosis? So as I mentioned, alcohol metabolism occurs mainly in the liver, but so does ketone production. And yes, alcohol absolutely affects ketone production. One of the core aims of eating a ketogenic diet is to keep the levels of insulin low to reduce the storage of fat. So most hormones in the body have an opposite hormone, and insulin is no different. Insulin's opposite hormone is glucagon. And whilst insulin is produced in response to high blood glucose levels, glucagon is the opposite. It's produced in response to low blood glucose level. Firstly, it signals the breakdown of those glycogen stores we mentioned earlier, and if there's no glycogen left, it tells the liver to produce ketones from stored body fat. So being in ketosis is a low insulin, high glucagon state. So what's this got to do with alcohol? Well, alcohol consumption reduces glucagon levels, reducing or stopping the production of ketones. And when we think about it, this makes sense because your body has all of a sudden found a new energy source. And alcohol is an energy source, so it doesn't need to keep breaking down fat for energy. So alcohol pauses ketosis. And you can test this yourself if you have a blood ketone meter. Urine ketone sticks are too slow to respond to this change, and alcohol will actually cause a false positive result if you're using one of the ketone breath monitors. There is, however, one exception, which to be honest is probably more of an interest to me as a doctor. In heavy and frequent drinkers, the opposite can actually be true. There is a condition called alcoholic ketoacidosis, where loads of ketones are produced, and this is a common reason why people with alcoholism end up admitted into hospitals. But for the average person who occasionally consumes a small or a moderate amount of alcohol intermittently, this doesn't occur. So yes, alcohol will disrupt ketosis, but only temporarily. And this is really, really useful to know when we talk about the effects of drinking on weight loss. Which brings me on to ask the all-important question, will alcohol slow down my weight loss when I'm on the keto diet? You've probably guessed that it does. It inhibits glucagon, which is the hormone that promotes fat breakdown into ketones. But it's useful to know that it only pushes pause on this process. And once the body has done dealing with the alcohol, ketosis can quickly resume. You can compare that temporary pause to when we consume carbohydrates, where we begin to fill up our empty glycogen stores, from where it can take several days in order to get back into ketosis. So in your weight loss journey, consuming alcohol is like standing still for a moment before you continue on with your journey. Whereas consuming carbohydrates, it's like taking several steps backwards. And those are steps that you will have to take again in order to get back to where you were before. And what about the carbs in alcohol? Yes, we do have to consider the carb count of the alcoholic drink itself. And I'm actually going to be covering some of the better low carb options later in this video. The other thing that we have to consider is that alcohol is an energy source. In fact, alcohol is often referred to as the fourth macronutrient, along with proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. You may have heard of alcohol being referred to as just empty calories, and this is true. It provides a source of energy to the body that doesn't really have any nutritional value. And the energy that we get from alcohol is energy that we don't need to get from elsewhere. such as your fat stores. So yes, you do have to account for the calories that alcohol provides, as well as the carbs. Finally, when it comes to thinking about alcohol and weight loss, we have to consider the effect that alcohol has on our decision-making abilities, especially when we have a lower tolerance to alcohol because, as we know, we're in ketosis. Where is that one low-carb drink going to lead to? Are you going to find yourself waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, still drunk from the night before, with pizza on your face that you've passed out in whilst drunk the previous evening? Now, you know yourself better than anyone, so all I ask of you is to be honest with yourself. Are you someone who can do alcohol in moderation? And this is one of the areas that I discuss really early on with my coaching clients, because I found time and time again that people whose social lives revolve around drinking quite heavily are really unlikely to succeed on a ketogenic diet unless they really address that part of their lives. So of course, if you're trying to lose weight and are struggling to do so whilst drinking alcohol, then you may wish to abstain from it. And it's worth mentioning that whilst many people do ketogenic diets for weight loss, that there are also a lot of people who do it to reverse the effects of metabolic syndrome, such as type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease. And if you are on a ketogenic diet to reverse the effects of fatty liver disease, then you should absolutely abstain from alcohol until you reverse the underlying problem. A fatty liver looks the same whether it's been caused by alcohol or by carbohydrates, and consuming either is likely to make it worse or at least halt your recovery. So if you do decide that you want to drink whilst on keto, what alcohols are keto friendly? Well, first of all, spirits. And the best options are the highly distilled spirits such as vodka, tequila, and gin, things like that. And these can be paired with a low carb or no carb mixer. One really popular zero carb choice is vodka with soda water, which I just found out is called seltzer water in the USA. Who knew? Basically vodka with fizzy water and lime juice. Now this cocktail has a name which might be considered somewhat rude. So I'm not going to say it here, but if anyone does know what it's called, then please drop that in the comments down below this video. So wine is another good option, which is low carb, although not zero carbs. White wines are generally lower in carbs than red. Dry wines are generally lower in carbs than sweet ones. Champagne and cava at the dry end of the sparkling wine sections are also really good options. Now, I don't want to go through the carb counts in all the different grape varieties of wine, but I do have a free downloadable PDF guide which contains all that information and also covers the carb counts of loads of different food groups such as fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and also non-alcoholic low-carb drinks. So if you're new to keto, then make sure you go and check that out. The link to find it is in the comments down below this video. So annoyingly for me, beer is on the list of drinks to avoid, as are any of the other sweetened alcoholic drinks or cocktails. But depending on where you are in the world, there are more and more low-carb alcohol products being made for those of us living the keto lifestyle. So that's about it. Lots to think about there. I just want to sum things up and talk about some of the ways that you can minimize some of the negative effects that we've talked about so far. And number one, drink in moderation and infrequently. Excess alcohol is never good for you. Number two, drink on a full stomach. Low carb might not be able to absorb as much alcohol as a large high carb meal, but it's better than drinking on an empty stomach. Number three, keep hydrated when you're drinking. Why not try alternating alcoholic drinks with water? Number four, if you're trying to lose weight, you may wish to abstain from alcohol, but if not, then be sure to measure the effects of drinking alcohol on your weight loss goals. And number five is avoid alcohol if you have fatty liver disease. So that's it for this week's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've definitely gone a lot deeper with this week's video, and I hope the information has been useful to you. I'm always trying to make videos that are going to be able to help you be successful in your goals. So if you have found this video helpful, then please give it a thumbs up and maybe leave me a comment down below. I do try and respond to every comment. Thank you to everybody who's left me a comment previously on videos. It's really, really great to hear how you're getting on with things, how you're progressing in your own journeys. And if you've got any suggestions for future videos that you'd like me to make that would be helpful to you, then that's a great place to leave your suggestion. If you think you'd know someone who'd benefit from this video, I'd love it if you'd go ahead and share it with them. And if you want to stay in touch, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And if you hit the bell, you'll get notified whenever I upload a new video, which I do every Tuesday. That's it for today. Hopefully, I'll see you next Tuesday.